Hey everyone, METALGAMERGEEK here. Welcome to the channel and to Let's Try This Cloudheim. But before I begin, if you'd be so kind as to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and make sure that notifications are turned on so that you can get updated when I post new videos, it would help me out tremendously. But now, let's get into Cloudheim. I had planned to play maybe an hour or two of this game before making this video, but somehow I managed to sink about 5 hours into it before realizing how much time had just passed. It blends combat, exploration, and crafting together so well that you honestly just forget how long you've been playing for, which in my book is a positive. The first thing I want to talk about though is just how gorgeous this game is. The visual and art style is very reminiscent of games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and everything in this game feels like it truly belongs as a part of this world. Speaking of the world, let's talk about the lore and the reason why you're out here adventuring. This game is heavily influenced by Norse mythology, and they do not shy away from that fact. The story so far is that the world has been shattered by an event called Ragnarok and has been broken up into a group of islands. The first that you'll be introduced to is called Arcadia, and it's fairly massive with a ton of content to explore. There's a total of 5 islands that will make up the map for Cloudheim, but only 4 are accessible at the time of this recording. To make your way to each island, you'll need to collect something called World Stars, which you can find by defeating bosses out in the open world, completing dungeons, and even just digging up treasure chests. But before you set foot on the island of Arcadia, you're dropped into a starting zone, which acts as Cloudheim's tutorial. Here you'll be introduced to many of the systems at play, from mobility mechanics like dodging, triple jumping, and using your lasso to ascend to new heights, how to search for hidden treasure chests, combat, which can take a few encounters to get a feel for the flow of a fight, but once it clicks, it really is fun. And mana burn, which is the game's way of preventing you from spamming abilities non-stop. It's a lot to take in, but the game does a good enough job introducing each of these mechanics at a steady pace, so not as to overwhelm the player. Once you reach the end of the starter zone, you'll be given a choice to pick your class and take the Bifrost Gate. But don't worry too much about the class selection here, because it's not permanent. That's one of the things that really makes Cloudheim stand out. The weapons you equip and use dictate what class you're playing as. Breakers are heavy hitters and make use of giant hammers and axes. Sentinels are defense focused and use shields. Rune blades are spellcasters that use swords and phantom blades. And finally, there's rangers who rely on fast combos and dual wielding weapons like daggers. Once you arrive in Arcadia, you're given a quest to go find someone named Ren, who will act as the main NPC point of contact when you want to progress the main story. But what really makes this game shine is the open world gameplay. Sure, you could just do quests non-stop and burn through the story, but the fun of the game lies in exploring your surroundings. There's a ton of puzzles to figure out, some simple, some more complicated, as well as the aforementioned world bosses, countless packs of mobs, and yes, you can also fish in Cloudheim. All of these activities will net you experience, which helps you to level up your character. Speaking of leveling up, there are a number of leveling systems at play here. As I just mentioned, defeating enemies, solving puzzles, and fishing all help to increase your character level, which nets you stat buffs. The next leveling system is called Weapon Mastery, which is just a fancy way to say, if you use a weapon, you'll get better with it. You basically gain experience for the weapon type you use in combat and will increase its damage output until you reach mastery with said weapon. There's also a class leveling system which will grant you rewards like new skills to use and master, as well as stat buffs. The final system at play is called shop leveling, and we'll get to that in just a moment. After you perform a few quests for Ren, they'll have you travel to Odin Shell, which is the giant flying turtle that you may or may not have noticed on your adventures, to set up your base. Now, in Cloudheim, your base is actually an open field where you set up multiple structures, like a cleansing pool to remove corruption from ore that you've acquired in your travels, a smelter to turn those ores into ingots or bars, a forge to turn those ingots into weapons for whichever class you wish, and your shop. To build all of these structures, you'll need something called stardust, which you collect by defeating enemies, bosses, and clearing out dungeons. But there are some structures that require gold to build. This is where your shop comes into play. Once you set up a sales table, set some items down, and open the shop, you'll notice patrons swing by to purchase your wares. This feels very reminiscent of games like Moonlighter, as eventually these patrons will have icons above their head, showing what types of items they're interested in. With each sale, you gain experience for your shop and eventually increase its level and unlock new structures to place down. It's important to remember this and to try to find a balance between adventuring and shopkeeping, as some of the structures you can place down, like altars, grant your character buffs, making your adventures a little bit easier. I mentioned dungeons. After you leave Odin Shell, you'll go back to Ren, who will now have you exploring dungeons to progress the story. Dungeons in Cloudheim are all procedurally generated, so you'll never have the same experience twice, which is great for replayability and farming resources like specific ores only found in dungeons. As to be expected with procedural generation, sometimes pathing can be a little wonky or feel repetitive from time to time, but they also have decent puzzles that need to be solved, which more than make up for seeing the same room every so often. At the end of the day, Cloudheim is an absolute blast to play. The game just launched in early access, so you might encounter a bug or two here and there, or maybe find an area that's a little bit empty, but that's to be expected. One other thing worth mentioning is that Cloudheim currently requires an online connection to play, even when you're playing solo. There are plans, however, to introduce an offline mode in cloud saves, but at the time of this recording, there aren't any dates associated with those plans. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of Let's Try This Cloudheim. I hope you enjoyed the video and will maybe consider dropping a like and smashing that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments if there are any other games you would like to see covered. And as always, take care, have a good one, and I'll see you soon.